June 28, 1919, 5:12 a.m. The Hall of Mirrors in Versailles is bathed in summer light, streaming through the tall windows and glinting off the gilded frames. The gardens outside are a picture of serenity, meticulously manicured and still. Inside, however, the air is thick with a palpable tension, a mixture of sweat and the scent of fresh ink. The German delegates are seated rigidly at a long table, their pens poised like weapons. Across from them stand the victorious Allied powers. The treaty lies before them, its pages feeling heavier than steel, each word a testament to the horrors they have all witnessed. The men about to sign have not forgotten the Western Front, the memory of trenches, some say 5 to 2 meters deep, cutting zigzag patterns through mud, still fresh in their minds. They remember the relentless artillery barges, where multiple guns fired shells by the minute, an inexorable tide of destruction. They remember casualty lists so extensive that clerks could no longer bear to read the names aloud. One study would later estimate that approximately a third of all casualties on the Western Front occurred within the confines of those very trenches. When the war finally ended, the collective desire to avoid another was paramount. Thus, the initial act of the story is one of preparation, but with a hidden, slow-burning fuse. The victors design a peace that is, in essence, a punishment. Germany must accept full responsibility for the war, cede significant territory, drastically limit the size of its army, and pay enormous reparations. The bill is fixed at 132 billion gold marks, a sum so astronomical that it becomes a symbol of oppression even before a payment plan is established. To Germans observing from afar, this feels like humiliation codified into law. A young German veteran in Berlin folds his demobilization papers into his coat pocket. He carries a worn photograph of his platoon, now with half the faces missing. He writes to his mother, "We didn't lose on the battlefield. We were betrayed." The phrase, "stab in the back," is already gaining traction, transforming defeat into treachery and history into a breeding ground for conspiracy theories. The second act, A Chaotic Collision, unfolds not in the trenches but in the volatile world of currencies and city streets. To make early reparations payments, the German government begins selling paper Reichsmarks for foreign currency, flooding the market. Inflation spirals out of control until money becomes practically worthless. By 1923, the Reichsmark has collapsed entirely. People carry bundles of cash just to buy bread, and even then, the price may change within hours. In cafes, people decry the weakness of democracy. In taverns, radicals recruit, promising order and revenge. The Weimar Republic, born from defeat, is now blamed for it. Simultaneously, the map of Europe is being redrawn in the wake of the empire's collapse. The German, Austro-Hungarian, Russian, and Ottoman empires disintegrate, giving rise to new states. Borders are drawn that slice through mixed populations, and old rivals clash again to solidify their boundaries. Peace doesn't fully return to Europe until 1923, 5 years after the armistice. The ground is unstable, like parched earth waiting for the slightest pressure to crack it open. The third act is marked by a quiet, strategic shift. The international system designed to prevent future wars is inherently weak from its inception. The League of Nations is established without the participation of the United States and lacks a standing army, relying solely on the willingness of its members to enforce sanctions. The idea is noble, but the mechanism is fragile. Aggressors will soon exploit that fragility. By the late 1920s, the fuse is exposed. A punitive peace, a crippled economy, and a precarious security system are all present in the same geopolitical space. The war has ended, but it has also planted the seeds for the next one. October 24th, 1929, 3:18 a.m. A trading floor in New York is a cacophony of paper and shouts, the sound of which reverberates across the Atlantic like shockwaves. By the time the sun rises in Berlin, the stock market crash is already tearing for the loans that have been supporting Germany's fragile recovery. Rain falls in thin sheets over the Spree River. Men line up outside factory gates. A foreman posts a list with fewer and fewer names on it. Someone tears it down in anger. This segment's initial act is an approach through desperation. The Great Depression transforms the already shaky Weimar Republic into a death trap. Unemployment soars to approximately 6 million by 1932. Families are forced to sell their furniture. Veterans hawk their medals. Radical political parties gain traction by offering simple solutions and assigning blame. Communists promise revolution, while Nazis promise national rebirth. Both promise decisive action, while Parliament descends into endless debates. Hitler interprets the Treaty of Versailles as a blueprint for exploitation. He points to the staggering reparations figure and the imposed military limitations, then to the empty stomachs of the German people, and draws a direct line between them. At rallies, he declares that Germany will tear up the treaty. Many in the crowd may not yet fully support him, but they are drawn to the promise of an end to national humiliation. The second act is a collision that spans borders. The post-war map has created minority problems throughout Europe. Germans in the Sudetenland, Hungarians in Romania, Poles and Ukrainians entangled in the East. Each grievance is a potential flashpoint. Revisionist states Germany, Italy, Japan begin testing the League of Nations resolve. Japan seizes Manchuria in 1931. The League takes 18 months to respond, and Japan simply ignores it. Italy invades Abyssinia in 1935. The sanctions imposed are weak, and no army intervenes. Each failure sends a clear message to Berlin. Treaties are mere paper shields. By 1936, Germany remilitarizes the Rhineland, then annexes Austria, then demands the Sudetenland. Each move is a step back into the old no-man's land, but without the trenches to slow the advance. Britain and France, still reeling from the memory of World War I, choose appeasement. The collision is initially diplomatic, but it is fueled by rearmament. Germany openly builds a Luftwaffe and expands an army far beyond the limits set by Versailles. A human pulse of fear beats throughout Europe. In Prague, a schoolteacher pins a map to the wall, then watches as borders shift in the newspapers faster than he can update them with chalk. In Paris, a mother keeps her father's World War I helmet on top of a wardrobe, praying that her son will never need one. The war is still a memory, but it is rapidly becoming a prophecy. The third act is a strategic breaking point in 1939. When Hitler seizes the rest of Czechoslovakia, the policy of appeasement collapses. Poland becomes the next line in the sand. Diplomacy fails. The system built after World War I collapses under the weight of its own contradictions, and the path to a Second World War opens like a door in a storm. September 1st, 1939, 4:45 a.m. The Baltic sky over Westerplatte is low and heavy with moisture. A German battleship fires 280mm shells, capable of reaching targets nearly 19 kilometers away, at a rate of about 2 rounds per minute. The noise is the same deafening roar that men swore they would never hear again. But the promise of 1919 has decayed and crumbled. The final segment's initial act is the last approach, driven by inevitability. Versailles has not reconciled Europe. It has merely rearranged the resentments. Reparations and war guilt have fueled German radicalism. Border adjustments have fueled revisionism. Economic collapse has fueled extremism. And the League's weakness has fueled aggression. All these currents converge on this fateful shoreline. The second act is a chaotic collision of total war returning with upgraded tools. Tanks, radio coordination, dive bombers, technologies that World War I gestated but never fully utilized, now drive the pace of destruction. Trench depth and artillery density once defined the grammar of stalemate. Now, mobility defines the grammar of collapse. The war spreads rapidly because the system designed to contain it had already failed. The third act is a strategic consequence. World War II is not a separate accident. It is the unresolved equation of World War I. When the First War ends, it leaves 3 lethal legacies. Asterisk the punitive peace without integration. Germany is disarmed and burdened with debt, but is not integrated into a stable European order. Asterisk a fragmented map teeming with minorities and insecure states. New borders create constant friction and conflict. Asterisk a security architecture without teeth. The League of Nations fails in every major test, teaching aggressors that the risks are minimal. The strategic aftermath is profound. Europe's map is redrawn again after 1945. Empires collapse, the use, and USSR divide the continent into Cold War blocks, and the international order is rebuilt around stronger institutions. The doctrinal legacy hardens into a single, cautionary sentence. A peace that humiliates and isolates can become a down payment on a future war. Technology and memory continue to serve as warnings. Mass mechanized warfare, strategic bombing and the targeting of civilians, and a quieter inheritance of photographs, graves, and anniversaries that serve as constant reminders. The Second War is not born in 1939 alone. It is born in the way 1919 attempted to conclude the first.